especially younger people, let's say under 30, who've grown up with all tech. You and I think grew up in an era where tech came along after we knew some things about golf, and tech either affirmed or said, you got to change your ideas on this. I think this new generation is all tech. And if tech says something, they don't know any better. They haven't made the mistakes. So I try to tell someone, I say, you got to watch what you use as what you're 100% right on, because that's usually what gets you in trouble. What you're completely convicted or have a conviction on is usually what will get you into trouble, as opposed to things that you're not quite sure about because you're still searching. And the range of motion one as well, especially as people say, well, I'm in a new mobility or flexibility program, and I listen to you, I got my stack, and now look, I'm going to crank on this even more. 3 months later, they come back and say, boy, my back is killing me. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Are your facets, do you have a spine that allows you to have a greater range of motion, wider facets instead of closer facets? Are you able to swing that? You use the stack, but don't go trying to get, it's going to get you more speed and you're going to hit it longer. Don't get addicted to say, well, I got 10 miles an hour, maybe I can get 20.
Right.
Because what's the cost, I guess, is the overall question I try to get people to ask themselves.
Yeah. I think with the stack system increasing, from a science perspective of speed generation, yeah, if we can, move the hands through a wider arc, if we can get the club moving through more of an angle, if we can apply more force over the hand path, more torque through the angle of the shaft releases, then we'll have higher club head speed. But for lots of reasons, you don't necessarily need to maximize all those out. Injury risk could be one. If you've got a particular issue at a certain joint, could be an old injury that you don't want to aggravate. It could be a predisposition to get an injury. There's no reason why, if you've worked with someone who's knowledgeable and says, look, this is the range of motion we want you working in, then you can't use a stack more like a John Rahm. Maybe your swing shouldn't look like Jake Knapp. Maybe it should look like John Rahm, right? And those guys might play probably in the average major at Augusta. They might have similar clubhead speeds, right? I think Jake's maybe a touch faster. But most people could probably stack like John Rahm without much of an issue. There's not a lot of range of motion. Now, you have to be an amazing athlete to generate that speed from that position. But so maybe you're limited overall in the population because your range of motion is a little bit less, but doesn't mean you can't build upon the speed you can generate in that range of motion.
Yeah, so I think people, and this goes for everything, as you know, Stu's information has been interpreted incorrectly, where he's dealing with damaged athletes or individuals, and people say, well, you can do this with this person. And it's like, yeah, but that person was just maybe out of shape. They weren't damaged, bad joint, bad back, whatever. And people will take your information and say, well, I only got 5 miles an hour swing speed. Yeah, but you got 5 miles more and you're not hurt. So like, what are we working with here? You can't just take somebody that says I got 25 miles an hour speed and think that everybody is going to get 25. Those are, call them the outliers, where the majority are going to get, and I don't know what the majority are getting, 5, 10, 15 extra. I know I picked up, I think 10 before I had to calm it down with my old beat up body. And it was great, 51 years old and back up to 118. I'm like, holy shit, this is nice. It's like a fountain of youth.
Yeah, if we look at the average is just over 10 with the driver for everybody that's stacking. That if we look at whether you've been doing it for 2 years or 3 years or 6 months, and to me, the approach, in my, if I had everything my way, I try to tell people that stacking's it's a lifetime decision. It's not a sprint,
Yes.
And the tour players that have had the best adoption of it have taken that approach. I'm not trying to gain 5 miles an hour next week. I'm trying to gain 5 miles an hour this year, maybe over 2 years. Ben Crane's been an awesome example of that. So he was someone who just, if you look at the chart, it's like half a mile an hour every 6 months. So you can't even see it. So sometimes he goes like 6 months, you get half a mile an hour. But then the next, 6 months, he gains 3, and then, because we've got lots of stuff going on in life, but, he's swinging at speeds now that he's turning 50 soon, that he probably was like, I would never be able to swing like that. He's over 120 mile an hour with the driver. But it was long, and there's a guy who, had a pretty beat up body. You know, he does now, in all fairness, he does an amazing job of taking care of himself, doing all the right rehab exercise. I don't know if I call them rehab exercises now, but maintenance
Mm-hmm.
exercises. And he does a ton. He's done a ton of stack workouts the last 2 years, and has had no issues, and has seen his club head speed go through the roof
Well,
gradually over time.
I think if more people took that approach, and I was reading a lot of Pavel Satsulin's work again, especially after spending time with Stu, and it makes so much sense. And maybe it makes more sense to me now that I'm 52 than it did when I was 22 or 32, because then you think you're invincible and you got to learn the hard way. But the whole point was don't fry yourself out in your workouts, and then you hit a wall and then it takes you a week or two to realize it, and then you got to take a month off. Do it slow progression, gain slow strength, or in this case, gain slow speed over time. So you're not hurting yourself, and you're taking 4 months off where you lose 50%. Now you got to gain 100% just to get back to baseline, and then kind of restart. I'm guilty of making that mistake myself. It's like, do it. Ben's model should be, I think, the model for most people who are, let's say, 40 to 45 plus. You don't have to increase a mile an hour every week on the stack. Just do it, and then look back at the end of the year. As you said, it's a multi-year or decade type development. It's not well, in 6 months I want to be 10 miles an hour faster.
And we're lucky. Lots of people post online and say, "Look, I've gained 10 miles an hour in the last 6 weeks," and that's true and it's real. And those
Mm-hmm.
people have had a lot of potential. They were probably really low on what they're maximizing at the start. They probably had some low hanging fruit in terms of improvement in their mechanics.
Right.
And so yeah, awesome. And those stories are real. That's
It was a
awesome.
perfect storm of they had the
Yeah.
untapped well.
Yeah, exactly. And the stock did a really good job of realizing that potential for them. But there are just as many people who, it might take a year to get out that 5 miles an hour. But if you're 57 and you're swinging at 100 miles an hour, and you turn 58, now you're swinging at 105.
Right.
Hey, that was probably worth the 45 to 50 minutes a week
Mm-hmm.
to go at it. I like your comments about weightlifting. My philosophy with lifting weights and a lot of workouts, the same with the stack. As I kind of introduced my 14-year-old, now we've been lifting weights together for a couple of years, is and when I deal with track athletes, is that you never want to be sore after a workout to the point that it impedes the workout you're planning to do
Yeah.
the next day or the day after, right? My kids are going through a lot of different sports teams, and I always try to kind of get involved with coaching, um, at some level, so I can have some influence. And hockey in Canada, it's all right. Let's let's hit the ground running in August, and let's do all right dryland training. And they run these kids into the ground thinking it's going to make them tough. Well, now these kids, their groins are tight. They've done
Mm-hmm.
4 hours of skating on a Saturday, and we expect them to come back on Sunday. They're at a camp. It's like you're not accomplishing anything. You're not going to
Mm-hmm.
be any further ahead in 3 weeks. You know, so if you're starting someone out with weights or with stack, we ease folks in. It's as I think that's like, I don't know, 20 swings your first stack session, and it should be no harder than you swing on the course,
Right.
right? So yeah, maybe the next day you feel like a little muscle tone. You're like, all right, but it shouldn't mean that two days from now you can't warm up and feel great. So if you're like, oh, I feel beat up, I feel like a truck hit me, and you probably didn't warm up well enough, or you probably went at it a little bit hard. Um, a general philosophy I like to apply is, hey, is it safe for me to stack? Some people are probably not in good enough shape to enter a stack program. Well, how do I know that? To me, the easy litmus test is, hey, could you hit a bucket of 40 balls and finish that with 10 hard drivers,
Mm-hmm.
as hard as you hit on the course in a wide open par five? And if you can do that and feel okay for the next 2 days, that level of intensity, those 40 balls hitting, taking divots, hitting drivers, is going to be about the same as we'd want with that stack session. Um, can you play 18 holes? So that if you're the weekend warrior, you haven't golfed that much, and those two, there are lots of people where those two things will affect you the next couple of days. If you've got a bad back or shoulder issues, if you can't hit 40 balls and finish with 10 hard drivers without feeling good the next 2 days, and probably let's get into some rehab exercises, do some mobility stuff, do some stuff. But then now you can get into the stack and start out.
Yeah, so if you're playing golf on Saturday with your friends in the whether it's 18, 27, or like we said, golfers are fanatical. They'll play 36, and then you got to fly out Monday for work, and you can't get in and out of your airplane seat. You probably
Yeah.
need to start back up a little bit and digress.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're not a training aid for everybody who's ever going to golf. We're a training aid for people who take golf seriously. You don't have to be the best golfer. You
Hmm.
could be a 30 handicap, but you're like, yeah, I want to try to improve. I have a couple of hours a week where I'm going to practice. If that's you, stack's great. Put some of that time into gaining some speed.
Yeah,
But if you're like, I'm going to play Saturday and that's it,
I tell you what
play
I
no.
found out what worked for me when I was doing it was if I don't have the hour and a half to go to the range, warm up, hang out, talk BS with the staff out there, and then do my thing for 45 minutes or so, and then go home. The stack is a great way to keep your swing
Yeah,
lubricated, timing, whatever you want to call it. It's a great way to do that. That when you do have the time to go back and apply yourself to golf, it comes back much faster
I agree
and
with that
better.
100%.